Pen turners have some unique material. These dyed maple resin impregnated blanks were a good deal a few years ago. And I've taken some holly. I've ripped this on the table saw, and now I'm perfectly dimensioning the thicknesses at 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch, and 1/2 inch. My pen blanks are not perfectly smooth, so I've put a mark to orient these all the same way, and I'm disc sanding a perfect, smooth, gluable surface on the two sides of all my pen blanks. Just going through my stack and getting smooth surfaces on the two opposite sides. Then to the table saw, a rip cut down the middle produces this size pieces. These have got a nice smooth surface on one side. Now I'll take these with little strips of double-sided tape on a board of MDF, mount them all, because I want these to be all consistent in thickness. The exact thickness does not really matter that much, but I want them perfectly the same, the exact thickness. These will end up being about 1/4 inch probably. If you use this procedure, make sure you don't use too much double-sided tape. It'll make it awfully difficult to get them off. Here's my pen blanks, all perfectly dimensioned. Here's my holly. I'm protecting two of the surfaces. It'll just make it easier to clean them up later on. My goal here with this material is to create sticks of holly that are perfectly square with a pen blank piece of material on each of the four sides. So it's a multi-step process. Here I've glued 4 pieces, 2 on each end. It's been cured for an hour or so. I need one clean surface with no lumps of glue, so I can run these back through the drum sander. I'll sand both sides, checking the dimension frequently. I want that dimension on both sides, both directions, to be exactly the same. Exactly what dimension doesn't really matter, but I want them to be the same. After achieving that, I put more pen blank material on, let this dry. After a little cleanup, I go to the chop saw and cut my various lengths. Each length is about 2/10 of an inch shorter than the previous length. Here's a possible arrangement. But before turning these, I need a hole drilled, and I'll drill from both ends, being very, very careful, taking every precaution to have these holes as centered as possible. A brad point bit is almost essential. To mount these on the lathe, I've turned a little piece of waste wood with a tenon that fits snugly inside that drilled hole. It's a friction fit using a little pressure from the tailstock. If you try this, it will be a loose fit. If you have a catch, the little piece of wood will just stop momentarily. Watch this here. These are little catches just to demonstrate. The piece of wood just stops, and then you take the tool away, it spins again. It's a nice way to mount something like this. And I'm hardly an expert with a skew, so it was a good way for me to practice. Having the centers perfectly aligned allows me to reverse this and then attack this end, get a matching curve. I'm also trying to get just a minimal amount of holly exposed between the oval pen blank material. Sanding it now up to 400 at least, and again the restriction where that ebony drive is forces me to change directions. The combination of having the holly square and the hole very centered produces these very similar shapes. That doesn't always happen. So I'll just continue the process. I've got to rearrange the fence on my drill press 2 more times for the 2 different sizes, but eventually I'll get a series of these beads in the various diameters all turned. I've decided I'm going to put little black ebony spacer beads in between. So I've taken pieces of ebony, drilled holes down through just as I did my beads, and used the same setup, except after turning it round, I did mount one end in the chuck to give me a firmer grip. Using a parting tool, creating these cuts, I'll next round the edges a little bit and part these apart into separate little teeny beads. Pretty quick and easy to do this, and it'll add a lot to the necklace. A little sanding, and then some parting here to separate these. I'll end up with a little bit of splinters of wood on the edge there where they were separated, but a quick touch up here on the disc sander. And just to make them stronger, I'm going to douse them in this thin CA glue. It'll give them a lot more strength. Before putting the necklace together, I need some type of clasp. I've decided to use a little elongated button that'll be passed through a loop of the cord that goes through the beads. This is a little piece of ebony that I've turned. I'll sand this little end, part it off, put it back in my little chuck here so I can sand the other end. After I've completed that, over to the drill press, secure it to a little V-block, and drill a pair of holes that my cord can go through. After consulting with my wife and daughter about the necklace length, I decided I didn't need the two smallest beads. I'm going to make the necklace a little shorter. So I've converted these two small beads into a set of earrings that you'll see here in another few minutes. For finish, I'm using Krylon Crystal Clear. This is a new finish for me, but I've heard good things about it, and it seems to work really well. And of course I use the same finish on the earring parts. In between coats, I buff the surfaces with a well-worn 240 grit sanding mop. And I did the same thing occasionally with these beads. I probably applied at least 5 coats. To assemble the necklace, I'm using this black leather cord. I started with a little loop with the end passed back through one of the small black beads, and then worked the end of that cord back into one of the end bead. I also have to check this opening for the button size. A drop of CA glue, and then closing this back up by sliding the small bead back into place secures this end. Then to thread the beads, it's just a matter of one after the other, a small one followed by a big one, until I've got them all on the cord. So for the other end, I have to install the clasp, the button, passing the leather cord through those 2 holes and sizing it to fit. If you've got somebody that can try this on, it'd be a nice time to do it. Trimming off the end of the leather and putting a little tapered cut here on the end. That'll assist me as I try to force that leather cord down inside that end bead. Once I've got that secure, I can then put a drop of CA glue in there, close it back up with the little black button, and there we are. We've got the necklace all in one piece. Now for the pair of earrings. Here are my 2 leftover small beads. I've got a couple more of these small black beads and the little end pieces that I turned. I've also got a pair of these little silver jump rings, 2 short pieces of the leather cord that I've taken a utility knife to and taper the ends, and a couple of these little French wire hangers. The trickiest part on the earring is to get this little piece of leather threaded in through the little black bead and forced into the larger bead. It's a tight fit. It takes a little persuasion. Here, a little CA glue down inside the tube secures the leather, and a little thick CA on the end secures that little end piece. And lastly, the installation of the French wire, just as I've done in previous earrings. This style of bead, what I call lamination trickery, is very adaptable. You can certainly come up with unlimited possibilities of color combinations, and by changing the shape of the bead, you'll get different effects. It's a fun technique to play around with.